Let me ask you something real. Have you ever walked away from someone who made you feel invisible, broken, or small, only to find your light started to shine the moment you left their shadow? Let me tell you something powerful. While you're out there healing, rising, evolving, they're stuck. The narcissist who tried to control you, manipulate you, diminish your worth, they're haunted, not by you, but by what they did to you. Let's talk about it. Let's break it down. Because once you understand this truth, you'll never doubt your value again. There's a point in life when you have to stop asking, why did they hurt me? And start declaring, they lost me. Narcissists thrive on your attention, your emotional reaction, your energy. And when you take it all back, when you go silent, when you cut them off, when you stop trying to make them see your worth, they're not just confused, they're disturbed. They thought you'd never wake up. They thought you'd always be available, always trying, always forgiving. But now that you're gone, now that your absence is louder than your presence ever was, they're haunted. And here's the irony. The very person who tried to convince you that you were the problem, that you were too sensitive, too emotional, too dramatic, they now sit with the echo of their own behavior. No distractions. Just the mirror, and it doesn't lie. You see, narcissists don't regret in the way you and I do. They don't feel empathy in the way you do, but they do remember supply. They do remember control. And when it slips from their fingers, they panic. They replay it over and over, not because they love you, but because they lost control over you, and that is their greatest fear. But here's what I want you to hear in your soul. Their haunting is not your closure. Your healing is your closure. Their karma is not your mission. Your peace is your mission. Because while they sit in cycles of shame, they'll never admit you've broken cycles. You've chosen growth. You've chosen life, love, truth, and most importantly, you. So the next time your mind wonders, do they even feel guilty? Understand this, they feel something. It may not be guilt, but it is emptiness, it is restlessness, it is regret dressed in ego. Because your silence is the loudest truth they've ever heard. You are not who they said you were. You are not broken, you are not weak, you are not crazy, you are powerful beyond measure, and the more you rise, the more haunted they become. Because your strength reminds them of everything they tried to suppress in you and couldn't. So walk tall, smile wide, live free, because the narcissist may be haunted by their past. But you are building a future so bright, even your scars are starting to shine. Let's go. When you were entangled with the narcissist, they thrived on noise, your emotions, your reactions, your justifications. They fed off your energy like it was fuel for their ego. Every time you tried to explain yourself, prove your worth, or defend your truth, you unknowingly gave them more power. But something changed the moment you chose silence. Not the kind of silence that comes from fear or defeat, but the silence of someone who finally realized their value no longer needed to be debated. This silence is deafening to a narcissist because it's the one thing they can't manipulate. It strips them of their favorite weapon, your emotional response. It removes the game, the drama, the chaos they carefully orchestrated to keep you off balance. When you go silent, the performance ends. The audience leaves, the spotlight turns off, and now they're left with the one thing they've avoided their entire lives, themselves. Silence says what words cannot. It says you are no longer accessible. It tells them their tactics have failed. It exposes the shallowness of their control, and most painfully for them, it makes them wonder what you're thinking, feeling, doing. Without them, that unknown eats at them. The silence becomes a mirror they can't shatter, one that reflects the truth of who they are and what they did. Narcissists are terrified of being irrelevant. Your silence removes their role in your life story. They are no longer the main character, no longer in control of the narrative. That's why it haunts them. They start to obsess over why you're no longer reacting. They question whether you've moved on, whether someone else now sees your worth. And every unanswered question becomes a ghost that follows them, whispering the one thing they try to avoid, consequences. You see, when you engage, even in anger, you're still part of the cycle, but silence breaks the cycle. It forces them to confront the fact that they no longer matter in your world, not because you're punishing them, but because you've chosen yourself. And to someone who built their identity around controlling yours, that is the ultimate loss. A common misconception is that narcissists are heartbroken or tormented because they lost someone they loved. But the reality is far more unsettling. They are haunted not by love, but by the loss of control. Control is the foundation of their false power. It's how they navigate the world, how they validate their ego, and how they manipulate others into playing roles that serve their narrative. When that control slips away, when you break free, when you no longer play the role they assigned you, they unravel. They don't miss the real you. They miss the version of you they were able to mold, influence, and exploit. They don't cry for the relationship. They mourn the end of their ability to dominate your mind, your decisions, your emotions. What unsettles them isn't your absence. It's the silence of your independence. You are no longer under their spell, and that realization is what haunts them. Their grip wasn't based on love. It was based on psychological leverage. The compliments were tools. The charm was bait. The affection was calculated. Every move they made was part of a blueprint to maintain control. And when you walked away or refused to engage, you destroyed that blueprint. Suddenly, the puppet cut the strings. The illusion collapsed. And the one thing they believed they would always have, your compliance, was gone. Now, without control, they lose their sense of superiority. The absence of control feels like chaos to them. It's not just about losing you. It's about losing the ability to predict and dictate your reality. They start to wonder if they ever truly had power, and that question alone is enough to haunt them endlessly. They become obsessed with regaining even a fraction of the control they once held. That's why they might reappear, stalk your social media, send mixed signals, or play the victim. It's all a desperate attempt to reclaim that lost dominance. And yet, each attempt fails when you remain grounded, when you don't react, when you don't respond, when you continue living in peace. That peace is their torment, because in your calm, they feel their chaos. In your freedom, they feel their powerlessness. Control is their currency, and when you stop spending your energy on them, they go bankrupt. Healing is not just about moving on. It's about rising. It's about choosing to rebuild yourself piece by piece, stronger than before, wiser than ever, and unshakably grounded in your own truth. When you begin that process, the narcissist who once tried to control your perception, your identity, and your emotions is forced to witness something they cannot comprehend. Genuine growth. And it terrifies them. Not because they care about your well-being, but because your transformation reveals a truth they work hard to hide, their own inability to grow. Narcissists remain emotionally stagnant. They repeat patterns. They repackage the same behavior, the same manipulation, the same excuses with every new person they meet. They do not evolve because they refuse to look inward. They avoid accountability like it's poison. So when someone they tried to diminish starts shining, when someone they thought was weak becomes powerful, it throws their entire ego into crisis. Your healing is a mirror. It reflects everything they're not. Your self-awareness makes their denial more obvious. Your emotional growth reveals their immaturity. Your clarity highlights their confusion. Your peace shows their inner turmoil. They see in you what they never had the courage to develop in themselves. And that realization, even if they can't fully articulate it, cuts deep. They may pretend not to notice. They may act indifferent, even mock your progress. But behind that mask, they feel it. They see it. And it unnerves them, because deep down they know they could never walk the same path. Healing requires humility, vulnerability, and the courage to confront your own flaws. These are traits narcissists run from. So instead, they stay in a loop. repeating the same games with different people, never changing, never growing. What's worse for them is that your healing invalidates the version of you they tried to create. The one who was needy, broken, or dependent, that version no longer exists, and now the person you're becoming is a living contradiction to their narrative. You've taken back your identity, and in doing so, you've exposed just how shallow and stagnant their inner world truly is. They can't keep up, not because they're incapable of change, but because they won't choose it. To a narcissist, your presence was never just about companionship. It was about validation. You served as a mirror for their ego, constantly reflecting back a distorted sense of superiority, power, and control. As long as you were around, feeding that need with attention, emotion, and energy, they felt important. But the moment you withdrew, mentally, emotionally, or physically, a void opened up inside them, and no matter how much they pretend to have moved on, that emptiness remains. Your absence isn't just silence to them, it's a loud, jarring void. It's not that they miss your essence, your love, or your soul. What they miss is how they felt because of you, how your reactions affirmed their influence. When you left, they didn't just lose a person. They lost a source of ego supply. And that loss creates a ripple effect inside them. Suddenly, the praise, the control, the emotional high they got from dominating your narrative is gone. Their inflated self-image begins to deflate. They may try to fill the space quickly. New people, new distractions, social media displays, all designed to restore what your absence took away. But it never works, because nothing feels quite like the supply they had with someone who genuinely cared, someone who gave deeply and loved fully. That energy is irreplaceable, and no shallow connection can replicate it, so they spiral, sometimes quietly, sometimes recklessly, trying to numb the emptiness they now carry. Even if they don't admit it, their behavior shows it. They might become more reactive, more desperate for attention, or unusually silent and withdrawn. All signs that the ego is starving, because it wasn't built to stand alone. It relied on you to prop it up. And now that you're gone, the cracks are starting to show. The real wound is not that you hurt them, it's that they can no longer use you, and this loss of utility hits their ego where it hurts most. It forces them to confront the fragile foundation they built their identity on. A foundation not of love, growth, or mutual respect, but of dominance and dependence. And without someone to dominate, they are left alone with themselves, a person they've spent their whole life trying to avoid. The narcissists live in a delusion where they are always in control, always right, always superior. But once you've broken free from their grasp, that illusion begins to crack. What haunts them most isn't necessarily what happened. It's the fact that they no longer have the power to shape the narrative. They can't twist your reality anymore, can't convince you that you were the problem, and can't manipulate the storyline to paint themselves as the hero. And so, they replay the past, not out of guilt, but out of obsession with a story they no longer control. They go back in their minds to the moments where they once had leverage, reimagining situations to preserve their sense of dominance. In their version, they were always justified, always misunderstood, always the victim. But now that you've walked away, those revisions no longer stick. You've seen the truth, and once someone sees clearly, the narcissist's power dissolves. That's why they keep returning to the past. It's not about reflection, it's about control. They obsess over what they said, what you said, what they could have done differently, not to make amends, but to find loopholes, escape routes, or new angles that might somehow preserve their false self-image. They dissect every interaction, not to understand you better, but to reassure themselves that they were never the one at fault. But the more they dig, the more the truth surfaces, and that truth is what keeps them restless. The inability to rewrite the ending drives them mad. They can't undo the fact that you woke up. They can't erase the day you stopped reacting, the moment you chose silence over arguing, dignity over desperation. Your growth becomes a permanent part of the story, one they didn't approve, one they didn't plan, and that loss of authorship torments them. They may try to rewrite the narrative publicly, spreading lies, twisting facts, playing the victim to anyone who will listen. But deep inside, they know what they did. They know what they lost. And they know they can't go back in time to change the outcome. That gnaws at their pride. It haunts their sleep. Because no matter how many times they replay it in their head, the one thing they can't do is rewrite it with them winning. When you rise after a relationship with a narcissist, it does more than signal your healing. It becomes living proof that their efforts to break you didn't succeed. Your growth, your peace, your confidence, all of it is a reflection of the strength they tried to suppress. And for someone who operates on control, dominance, and ego, watching you thrive becomes a constant reminder of their failure. Not just any failure, but the one that cuts deepest. They couldn't destroy you. Narcissists feed on your doubt. They work to dismantle your identity, so you become dependent on them for approval, validation, and reality itself. Every criticism was a seed planted to make you question your worth. Every manipulation was a rope to tie you down emotionally, but instead of staying bound, you unraveled those lies, you rebuilt yourself. You stepped into your power, and now every step forward you take is a direct contradiction to the narrative they tried to create about you. You see, they didn't expect you to come back stronger. They expected you to stay small, apologetic, and broken. They thought they were the best you could do. That's the lie they told themselves to justify their behavior. So when you elevate, when you start setting boundaries, discovering peace, creating new relationships, and loving yourself, they are forced to see the truth. You were never weak, just wounded, and wounds heal. Your transformation becomes symbolic. It's not just personal growth. It's a spotlight that shines on everything they failed to achieve within themselves. They remain stagnant, circling the same toxic patterns, while you evolve into someone wiser, healthier, more resilient. That contrast is unbearable for them, because in your evolution, their dysfunction is exposed. They may act unimpressed, indifferent, or even mock your progress, but behind that mask is discomfort. Because no new relationship, no distraction, no ego boost can hide the reality that they lost someone who was capable of true growth. Something they themselves resist out of fear and insecurity. Your evolution breaks the illusion they tried to build. It rewrites the story they thought they controlled. And even if they never admit it out loud, deep down, they feel it every time they see you standing tall where they expected you to fall.